What's up? Welcome to Dharma Time here on WPSN99.com. As always, I am the host, Dharma Guy, here with the Dope Doctor.
What up, what up?
Now, are you the original Dope Doctor?
Man, whoever that is, I am the official. I don't know who the hell that other clown is.
Just so you guys know, we are all on social media. Matter of fact, feel free to follow us on social media, and that's at the Dharma Guy, at the Dope Doctor, at WPSN, and even while you're at it, go ahead and at Now Matters More. But there's some controversy happening because the Dope Doctor is being knocked off on Instagram. Was the Dope Doctor
1998? Official? Mine started in 1998. I don't care when his started.
Are you the official?
He can call himself the official. But mind you, I guarantee that guy was probably like 5 years old in 1998. So, mira. For you that call yourself the official Dope Doctor, vete pa'l carajo, cabrón.
Somebody's a little testy. Anyways.
I'm going to have to deal with the coping. How to deal with
That's right, man. Anyway, so while we're at it, so those are all social media. By all means, feel free to follow us on social media. Drop us a line. Let us know some topic ideas, things of that nature.
Right.
And then, of course, you can always catch the visual edited versions on YouTube at youtube.com/Dharma Time. Make sure you subscribe, like, share with your friends, things of that nature. It truly does help us out. And while I'm talking about it, as far as helping us out, I want to take a minute here for those of you who do not follow me on social media and did not get my my gratitude yesterday. We have recently started taking things a little bit, I don't want to say more seriously, but
Jesus,
we've been putting out content, but now we're looking at it from more of a productive side, I guess.
Working harder.
That's right, and so we downloaded some software and things of that nature, and we kind of got an idea for where we're ranking. And I want to say thank you to everybody right now. We checked it out, and the streaming service that we use to put things up is Podomatic.
Right.
And on there, Dharma Time, in its category, is number 2. Ooh. Number 2 is number 2. Work for. And then overall, we're in the top 1,000, actually, for all podcasts, no matter what the subject matter. And then on iTunes in America, we are we made it as high as number 15
for
in
now.
the United States.
15.
That is, thank you guys. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Tell a friend.
Thank you for listening. And apparently we're big in Australia for some reason, which is cool.
They know what's up.
Yeah, that's right, man. Or
Australians have always been cool.
Down under, maybe? I don't know.
They're down.
Anyways, and then, as always, very quickly, him and I are both involved with the Now Matters More Foundation. He, of course, is the founder. I'm the president. If you or anybody you know is struggling with the disease of addiction, you don't know who to reach out to, and you need some help, call 833-NOW-MATTERS. That's 833-NOW-MATTERS. Or you can go to nowmattersmore.org and fill out an application. Or you can even hit that donate button and give us some cash to help people out.
That's right.
All right, so let's get to talking about coping.
All right, let's do it.
So full disclosure. Well, first of all, I'm excited right now. I am excited. I am grateful.
Right.
Because for those of you who have been listening to the show for quite some time now, you might have heard some occasionally my mic would sound muffled. We figured out what it was today. We got some new equipment, and we also found out that there was a short in the board for the number 2, which is what I was, and so we fixed that, and now you can hear me. So I am grateful for that. I sound so much better. It does make it easier to hear yourself, though, by the way. Because you always sound like you're right in my ear.
I am right in your ear.
Now. But anyway, so I digress. Let's get back to the point. All right, so coping. Man, so first of all, what is coping, right? Because we hear it a lot. We as a foundation are in the process of trying to put together something to go to different schools and stuff and try to help our youth figure out ways of coping that are healthy for them. We talk about coping a lot on this show, and even on the Couch Live on Fridays. We talk an awful lot about what we think is causing some of these like mass shootings, even drug use, is our inability to cope in a healthy way. Mm-hmm. So, but what is coping, right? What is it? You said something to me earlier. You said it was balance, essentially, right? So
yeah, I think so.
How do you define that? Like balance of what?
Oh, I'm going right to it.
Let's get it. What is coping?
Well, to me, when I think coping, I think that you have to start at the root. I think that if you just deal with these strategies people talk about,
right?
Whereas, I listen to music, I pray, I go for a walk. To me, those are secondary.
Right.
I think a true coping skills go to the root of the issue, which is look for where the unbalance is.
Okay.
Right? All right. So if you're not eating properly, for instance.
Okay.
If you're not nourishing yourself, you're not putting enough liquids in, then physiologically you're off. And if you're off, you're always trying to play catch up, or your body's or you're trying to look for ways to feel better.
Right.
So you may drink something you shouldn't drink. You may eat something you shouldn't eat, and that creates an off balance. And therefore, when it comes to something psychological,
Right.
you're not in your best way. You're not as clear-headed as you normally are, as you're not
Sure.
as prepared for the issue. If psychologically something has happened to you or going wrong, and you're off balance psychologically, you're not doing what you need to do. You're not reading things that maybe you should read. You're not inputting stuff like Dharma Time. You're not having the nourishment for you psychologically. Then you go off.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of a big takeaway I would like for everybody to have today, to be honest with you, is I think oftentimes there is a confusion, right? People think a lot of times when somebody tells me about coping, what they give me is distraction a lot of times. And so I think there is a huge difference between coping and distraction.
Well, that's why I think you have to go to the root, because if you don't go to the root, you're constantly distracting, and you're constantly chasing.
Yeah, and not that there's nothing wrong with the occasional distraction, right? If that distraction is a way for you to kind of recenter yourself and approach something with skill, you know what I mean? As react versus respond, like we did. What was it, a couple weeks ago?
Right.
I myself, right? I have moments to where I know that in a certain situation, I'm likely to react.
Right.
And my reaction is typically not going to be, helpful to the situation.
Right.
Because reactions are typically emotion based. And so if I truly value the situation, or I'm trying to maintain my inner peace, then I will distract myself. I will find something to do to kind of just, as my wife calls it, process, right? She calls it process. I call it distract, whatever it may be, whatever your adjective is.
Well, process and distracting are two different things.
Well, whatever you call it, because in her mind, she likes to process stuff, and for me, I distract myself away from whatever the problem was, so I could process it. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're doing, right? You're processing. You're trying to come to terms with what just happened.
But what you said is accurate.
Yeah.
What you just said right there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what I like to do is I'll find something to distract myself, so I'm not kind of replaying that situation over and over. I'm not feeding the dragon, if you will. And then when I'm able to kind of like digest it and kind of understand what it was that irritated me about that situation or affected me, I'm then able to approach it in a much more skillful way.
Right.
And in that sense, that to me is not the coping, though. The coping is the ability to take whatever it was and not let it ruin my entire day or week or month or whatever it is. I'm able to tolerate whatever it is and kind of deal with it in a skillful manner. To me, that's the coping. That's the skills. And so for me, coping skills are more along the line. When I think coping skills, I think of meditation, processing, evaluating, kind of prioritizing. Like, those are all coping skills in my mind, personally.
I agree.
Now, the other things are basically tools to facilitate my coping. Yeah. So, for instance, if I need to take a few minutes to take a walk, if I need to breathe, if I need to go, I don't know, you and I both enjoy some PlayStation every now and then. If I need to go just kill things, on the TV, kind of just to veg out for a minute, that's all to enable me to better cope. That is not my coping skill.
I agree with that.
That is my chance to just breathe for a minute and kind of just detach for just a second, gather myself, and so I can approach the situation with more skill. And so to me, I think that's a distinction we've got to make between coping skill. Because if a problem occurs and all I do is walk around, or all I do is pray or meditate, or nothing changes, my perspective doesn't change, there's no solution, there's no resolution, all I did was just do these things, that's not really coping in my mind. That is just sweeping stuff under the rug. And then the problem with that is eventually things need to be dealt with.
Well, some things that need to be coped with is maybe some of your limitations.
Right.
So as a person with ADD, right? For instance, it's hard to get that focus that I'd really like. So part of the coping mechanisms that I had to embrace is try to come up with tricks to how to focus, for instance. So if you've ever shot a weapon, if you ever shot a gun, especially out of using a scope, you realize that you had to figure out how to do I shut one eye? Do I not shut one eye? how do I look out of it?
Right.
You know, much like a binoculars.
Right.
More people have looked out of binoculars. You have to kind of like figure out how to look out of binoculars. It just doesn't pull them up and then there it is. You have to like figure it out. So once you get it, then you kind of like shut everything out and try to focus on what you're looking at, either through the telescope, through the microscope, through the scope of a gun, a weapon, or whatever, and you kind of look at what you're doing, and then now you do other things like you focus on your breathing.
Right.
So now you focus on your breathing so that it doesn't move, and then you focus on, all right, just that one digit's going to move, and boom, you shoot.
Right.
So same kind of way is what I trained to be able to focus on school.
Right.
Or to be in class. It's just, all right, let me just put the person in a scope, and I'm not talking about shooting a teacher. I'm just talking about, like, you put them in a scope.
The views and opinions.
Yeah. And then so I have to, logically, I have to think through shutting everything out. So I visualize the scope going near, and then all of a sudden everything else gets cloudy, and then I can hear noise coming from this direction more than I hear noise coming from that direction. That was a coping mechanism. It's not just like, oh, just pay attention or distraction. Right. It's no, I'm imagining an actual scope like from a weapon, and so that I can physically see it more clearly, and then the breathing and everything. So so those are the kind of mechanisms that I think are more useful.
Yeah.
So you don't focus on the anxiety of it. I think some people are just focused on, well, I have anxiety.
Yeah.
So but if you tell yourself that all the time,
you're going to start believing it.
That's not only just believing it, and maybe you need to believe, but it's constantly on your mind. Everything of why you can't do it is, well, I can't do it because I'm ADD. I can't do it because I'm anxious. Yeah. I can't do it because I have this problem. I can't do it because I have that problem. One thing is recognizing the problem. The other thing is getting to the root of it and asking yourself, well, do I really want to push through it? And if I really want to push through it, I can't identify with that. I'm not going to identify myself as anxious. I'm going to understand that anxiety is a very normal thing that happens. Distraction is a very normal thing that happens. Yeah. But I'm going to scope it down, and I'm going to focus, and I'm going to shoot it.
Well, the best definition, because, you know, believe it or not, I do some research before these shows.
Really?
Yeah, man.
Wow.
And so one of the things, there was a phrase that I read somewhere that was I think hit home as far as my definition of coping skill, and that is, it says coping skills help you tolerate, minimize, and deal with stressful situations in life.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good definition. And that to me is why I said, like, there's a difference between distraction and coping. You know, distraction is absolutely necessary for some people, but true coping skills, essentially, like, if you've coped with something, it's not something that continues to arise, if that makes sense. Right? Like, I've coped with certain things in my life that, not to say that they don't arise in other situations, but I no longer have to keep coping with it.
Right.
You know, the idea of coping is more of it's not necessarily final, but it's like it's kind of like, if you're driving home, right? If you take the same way home every single day, you don't, there's a certain point where you don't even have to navigate anymore. You don't have to think about, where am I at? Where do I turn? You just kind of know, right? And so when you've effectively coped with something, that's kind of how it should work. If the same situation pops up over and over and over again, you shouldn't have to keep coping with it with the same intensity as you did the first time.
What you're talking about is the mental memory, just like muscle memory.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And so, for instance, like an example of unhealthy coping skills, because there's healthy and unhealthy, right?
Right.
And the ones that you and I will both agree with, that we talk about all the time, unhealthy coping skills are like things are not sustainable.
Right.
And they're things that don't necessarily cope. They don't solve or resolve anything. They just kind of like block out that period of time. You know, the first one that comes to my mind, obviously, from what you and I both do outside of here, would be drugs and alcohol.
Right.
You know, like, I'm not now. Let me preface this by saying, if you're the type of person that likes to come home at the end of a long day's work and sit down and have a beer or have a wine or whatever, I'm not talking about that. Like, if that's how you choose to unwind, if that's something that brings value to your life and you're able to live your life and control it and kind of, it doesn't impact it in a negative way, then more power to you. Awesome. But if every single time a stressful situation comes, you think that glass of wine is going to make it all better, make it all go away, that's an example of an unhealthy coping skill, because it doesn't resolve anything. Typically, it's going to make it worse. And all you did was just, you distracted yourself from that just to essentially postpone it and get over it. No resolution happened. That same situation happens again tomorrow. You're no closer to solving it than you were yesterday.
Well, I think what you're talking about in that particular thing is a recalibration is one thing. That's why I call it all balance. Coping skills to me are just complete balance. So I think that if you're the kind of person that comes home and you drink that one beer, one wine, or whatever, you might be recalibrating.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of people out there that actually have a drinking problem,
yes,
or a distraction problem, whatever you want to call it,
sure.
and they're no longer recalibrating because it tips too far to the other direction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
it's a crutch now,
right?
You know, that's your sole coping. You know, and it's not really doing it. Like for instance,
so it's not necessarily the action; it's how much of the action are you doing?
Yeah. And that's what I was saying. Like if that's your way of unwinding at the end of the day, if that's your way of relaxation, cool. Like more power to you. But my issue, like when it comes to my children, when something happens, you know, like if a bully happens or something, like one of my kids, if they say something they don't like,
right?
I don't tell them to just kind of you know, ignore it and move on with your day. You're fine. Like go play a game. You're good. Yeah, because that would be an example of distraction and ignoring.
Yeah.
So instead, I try to get them to understand why it hurt their feelings. I try to get them to understand maybe where the other person's coming from. I give them tools or ideas on how to stop the process moving forward. Like, hey, maybe you can do this. Maybe you can do that.
Right.
You know, look at it this way. Those are all coping skills. Those are ways of helping them get through the day where it doesn't impact them as much anymore. And that is the desired goal, if you will, from coping skills. And I don't think we all have them. A lot of people think that they do. A lot of people tell people that they do, but they don't really have them. You know, once again, distraction is not a coping skill. Getting so boozed up that you kind of don't remember anything or you're numb to everything. I'm not going to say that's coping. You're not coping from anything.
Replacements typically don't work a long time unless you come up with a replacement that actually can be identified as a coping mechanism. For instance, in a situation where you have a high pressure job, and you start doing something that's an ineffective thing for you. If you start going out every night, going to the happy hour or whatever, because you know that work hard, play hard kind of thing.
Sure.
I think that if you replace something that's just equally as hard, then what's the balance from that? Where's the healing from that? Now, I want to take the one that you said, though. The bully thing, I think, is a really positive one because that affects a person's self-esteem. And the only reason a bully is even effective is when you already have some self-esteem issues or you already have some insecurities that are easily pushed.
Sure.
The real coping skill in that situation is to kind of process through what's actually hurting you and why it's hurting you, just like you said.
Yeah.
So can you get a little bit deeper into that, like the conversation that would kind of go with that? Because I think that's a real coping skill, what you just brought up.
Yeah, well, for me, like, there's two different types of coping, really.
Right.
There's, they call it problem-based coping and then emotional. Right. Problem is a situation that I'm in, like, hey, you know, bad relationship, a bad job, whatever it may be, how do I fix this problem?
Yeah.
And then there's the emotional one. The emotional one is how is this impacting me? How does it make me feel? You know, how am I dealing with this? And bullying, for instance, is more of it can be situational. Obviously, like if it's you're in a you know, certain friends that you're hanging out with are constantly bullying, then maybe you stop hanging out with them. But the emotional part is how it impacts you, like how it impacts your internal dialogue. And I think that's important to address. I think that's, you got to ask yourself, what is it that's happening here? Why is this impacting me so much? Why am I putting value on that? Why is that hurting me so much? Is there an underlying issue that I'm not aware of? Is there pain? Is there trauma there that I'm ignoring? You know, why is this hurting me so much?
But I think that's why you need to go deeper with that, actually. Yeah. In other words, okay, let's say you have an insecurity because you're weak. You know, you feel weak, right? Someone's physically stronger than you bullying you. Okay. Going back to the bullying one. Okay. Someone's physically stronger than you and they're bullying you. Okay. How about some acceptance that, I'm weaker than the person.
Yeah, well, there's other ways to be strong.
Yeah, so it's like it's offending you, but it's offending you because you're under the impression that you have to be equal in that particular strength.
Yes.
Instead of finding a different strength that you have to feel a little bit more confident about, right?
Sometimes you got to change your definition of strength, right? Like oftentimes we on a previous show we were even talking about success, like. Right. We gotta oftentimes, like, success is not a definitive thing.
There's no one. There's no one thing that makes one person more successful than another.
It's a very fluid kind of thing, right? Like, you know, using a sports analogy because we apparently always do that. you know, if you're a very successful, well organized, well talented team,
right,
and you don't make it to the Super Bowl or the championship or whatever it may be,
right.
some could argue that wasn't a success.
Right.
But if your team wasn't even in the playoffs and it was unorganized, it's all new people, it's very, it's
lost your quarterback.
Yeah, it's just a horrible mess.
Yeah.
Then making it to the playoffs or having a successful season, that was a success. With what you had, what you were able to do with it was a success.
Right.
So success isn't necessarily. So the same thing with when it comes to strength, for instance.
Right.
Who's truly stronger? The person that can go into the gym and bench press 400 or 500 pounds,
right.
or the person that can endure, trauma after trauma after trauma and still manage to have a positive and healthy outlook in life and help those around them. Who's truly strong? I would say both in different ways.
And it really depends on where you put the value, right?
Exactly.
I mean, listen, obviously, I don't put a lot of value onto physical strength because it's never going to be my biggest. It's never going to be my big. It's never going to be my biggest thing. It's just not. So I'm not going to put the time and dedication that it takes to become that kind of physical specimen. I'm just not. Right. I'm not going to go lift weights like crazy. I'm not going to hang out in the gym all that time. It's just not my deal. I don't get joy from that, and I don't find pleasure in what it looks like. Right. Like what it looks like is not what I want to look like. It just doesn't do it for me. Whereas if you can kind of sit back and go like, well, but what are the gifts that I do have? Like for me, I focused on the gifts that I do have. I have the gift of communication. Right. I have the gift of being able to be in very stressful situations and kind of stay calm to the moment and still find the solution. And then I have the gift of finding solutions where they're not easily read. Right. And guiding others through that forest, right? And then being utilizing my humor instead of just the pain, utilizing my humor to get through it and to help other people view it differently. When you start doing things like that, you start, whoa, these are different muscles. These aren't muscles that are usually found very easily, but when you find them, then instead of comparing yourself to someone else for a strength that you perceive in them, compare yourself to yourself and say, what can I improve that I actually put more value on?
Right.
Like, you can get physically stronger.
Sure.
I don't know if you can get intelligent. You can know more things.
Depends how you define
No, you can know. Yeah, you can know more things. So if that bothers you, go get to know more things. Yeah. Go to school.
Go get knowledge.
If you feel like dumb, if that's your insecurity, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think. In the end, right? Like, because. We both have children.
Not me. They're all adults now.
Well, they're always going to be your children.
All my kids are adults.
But I'm just trying to think of them, right? Like, one of the things that I'm trying to instill in them is the ability to cope. And, I guess if I'm trying to teach them the value of coping, like, why even do it, right? Because I have little ones, and I have a 15-year-old, and actually today, a 20-year-old. Happy birthday, Trevor. You're 20.
Happy birthday, Trevor.
So trying to talk to them and help them understand coping, the value is I see oftentimes, especially my older ones, if they haven't fully developed some of their coping skills, things that take place in their life are almost, I'm going to be hyperbolic here for a second. They're shattering.
Hyperbolic.
They're shattering when they're not supposed to be, right?
Okay.
Other words, something will happen that it should just be a speed bump on your screen, but it's like debilitating for them. Mm-hmm. Like something will happen and it'll screw up your entire day or your whole thought process, and it paralyzes you almost. That is why coping skills are necessary, because it helps you put things in their proper place. It helps you take it in, digest it, evaluate it, deal with it the best way you can, and kind of keep going on. That's the ability to cope, and that's why it's important. And so for me, that's what the skills are. The skills are the ability to, objectively look at it, digest it, interpret it how you need to, figure out, I guess that one statement said minimize it, to minimize it, to make it not like the most important thing in the life. You got to figure out how to put it, because life goes on, right? Like no matter what it is, unless you're dead, obviously, your life is going to continue to move. Life is going to continue to happen. And so you have to learn how to kind of minimize it enough to where you can move on with your day. And
but how do you minimize it?
Well, that's just it, by looking into it. Like, it's more of a cerebral thing to me. It's not really a physical thing, Oh,
it's definitely a cerebral thing.
So I think physical, the things that people do physically that we call coping skills, things like exercise, things like, music or whatever, those are all tangible physical things, and I think those are awesome, but I don't think they actually help you cope with anything. I think they help you, like you said, reset, recenter yourself, put you in a mindset where you're able to cope with something. But I don't think those actually cope with anything. I think those help putting you in a mindset. Like I said, if I'm upset, like if I'm frustrated, if I'm overwhelmed or whatever it may be, and I'm not able to cope at the moment, then I can do something to distract myself, to, like you said, recenter myself and get me back down to where I can use my coping skills.
Right.
My actual coping skills are all mental, meaning, okay, who, what, when, why, how, and where. You know what I mean? Like, what's the problem here?
Right.
Why is it bothering me? What can I do about it? What can I not do about it? How do I accept this and get on with my life?
Yeah.
And that is the coping skills. And that is all mental. That is not a physical thing that we do. Physical things are great, but don't confuse that with coping. Just because you're great at compartmentalizing, just because you're great at kind of like, forgive and forget type of situation where you just don't think about it and you move on and you go do something else, don't confuse yourself into thinking that is equal to coping with it, because it's not.
Well, that act of going back to the minimizing thing, though, the way to minimize something is to, first of all, you have to accept it for what it is and how it's affecting you, right?
Yep.
But the other thing is if you want to minimize some sort of thought or feeling that you're really having, and you don't know the root, you're going to really struggle with it. Some of you are not going to get it just from your own thinking. Sometimes you're going to have to go listen to somebody else's story of having the same issue, and then instead of sitting there closed-minded and think, well, that's not me, that didn't happen to me, looking for all the ways to not identify, is trying to identify with other people that have survived something.
Yeah.
And I think that's a skill that we don't use enough of, which is just listen to other people's processes, and maybe it doesn't relate to you, maybe it does, but going to where the problem speakers are is going to help. And I think that's why people in 12-step rooms and group therapy work so well. That universality effect, when you hear someone else kind of telling your story, when you hear someone else processing through their pains or how they've dealt with it, allows you to kind of just hear other ideas.
It's funny you bring that up, because that is not something that I realized not everybody did early on in my life.
What? Listen?
Well,
or process?
Relate.
Oh, relate. Yeah.
Like,
well, that was a skill I had to develop, so I didn't relate either.
I wasn't aware of that.
No, I always focused on differences.
One of my things that I did when I was younger that I just instinctually did was people around me were doing things that I saw getting them in trouble and doing. So instead of me thinking, well, I can do it and not get in trouble, I would let me avoid that, or let me it's not that I didn't do anything bad, but before I would do any of my illegal activity, for instance, I would think of all the ways that people I knew got caught, and I would already kind of plan for that type of a situation. And so, and when I would hear people in relationships or whatever it may be, like my own issues that I had with my dad, right? Like all my anger issues, I never really went to therapy for any of that. I didn't go to a professional, but I still managed to cope with it because I would listen to other people and how they got over their frustrations and forgiveness issues, or dealt with their parent issues, or I would read books and things of that nature, and I would learn through listening to other people share stories and stuff. That's not something I realized, I guess, at one point in my life early on, that not everybody did. But now that I have kids and everything else, I start to realize that not everybody does do that. That it is a skill that I wasn't aware it was a skill. I thought it was instinctual in everybody. I think to an extent it is, right? Survival-wise, we all know to avoid a car barreling down on you. But the subtleties of things, I do believe that we got to let our ego kind of move to the side a little bit and start to realize, hey, I can learn from this person. I think back when I was at when we were at Tropical, and I was filling in as a tech for that day, and I took some of the people there to an AA meeting and an NA meeting. Never been to one. All I saw was what they showed in TVs and stuff, so I didn't know what to expect. But my philosophy was, I can't expect him to do something I wouldn't do myself. So I went and took him in there, and when I heard some of the stories, even though I'm not an addict, I was still able to hear the stories. I'm like, wow, like I can understand the message there, essentially. And it was crazy to me when I walked out. The ones that I took there, they were all complaining about it. They didn't associate with it in any way, shape, or form. They didn't attach themselves to that outcome at all. And so I tried to help them understand, like, hold up, how about looking at it this way? instead of those are people who you don't directly relate to, or you see the flaw in their thinking, or whatever it may be.
Right.
How about you look at it this way? That's another human being that just came in and bared their soul for you, for the purpose of helping you understand something, seeing something within yourself. Because, and I'm guilty of this as well. You and I both are. I know for a fact we are. Often, I used to have this phrase in my more arrogant younger years. When somebody said, you can't do that, I would always stop. No, you can't do that. I can't, right? And I had this false sense of confidence in the sense that oftentimes I would set out to do something that people would say are impossible, and I ended up pulling it off somehow, some way.
Right.
And so I think in some instances that's true for all of us. I think we all have the ability to overcome certain odds, but the reality check that we got to keep in mind, there's certain universal truths, though, that we kind of have to keep in mind, right? Things like, communication. Like, for instance, I'm thinking instantly of, like, some marriage discussions I've been in with people. There's certain universal truths in that. Like, if you don't communicate, and you don't communicate effectively, good luck building a good marriage. I don't care how great you think you are, certain things you're just not going to overcome. And so I think that's where we struggle sometimes is knowing what we can and can't overcome, right? Like, these deficiencies you're not going to be able to overcome. It's going to be very difficult in life to try to find happiness and true inner peace if you don't develop coping skills.
Yeah.
Right? I don't care how great you are at whatever it is you're great at. Good luck. I don't think that's going to happen. It's those kinds of things I'm thinking of anyways.
I think more important than finding those the effective coping skills is discontinuing the ones that aren't working. The
ineffective ones?
Yeah, the ones the things that you think are working that may not be working, that may be complicating the situation. For instance, I don't think anyone really complains or disagrees with taking a step back and breathing and just giving yourself a few seconds. You always have a better thought process.
Yeah.
Your instinct is only really necessary for things that require instincts, for like catching a ball, or dodging a bullet,
fight or flight,
fighting. You know what I mean?
Which is what the lizard brain was intended for.
Yeah, that's what it's for. But in other situations in your life, it's all about the processing. It's all about that frontal lobe stuff. So if you're not able to think, reasoning, listen, and learn, and go through that entire process, I think that you're going to accidentally step into something you think is helping you because you like it.
Right.
Well, you like it because you're no longer thinking about the other thing, which is causing you some pain or some discomfort.
Yeah.
But it's not coping. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I think you wanted to really tap into today by listening to you, is that you really wanted to create a big distinction between distraction and coping. Whereas I think we also need to maybe give specific strategies of coping, of how to do that. If we're going to talk about coping, then what are some tricks of the mind or tricks of the self that can actually be effective?
Well, for starters, the number one that just popped in my head when you were saying that is listen. Listen more than you speak.
Right.
In a situation, right? Oftentimes you're famous for saying, be on record, not pause. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes we think we're listening when all you're really doing is waiting for your turn to talk.
Right.
You already have a million things that you want to say to this person, and then as they're talking, all you're trying to do is refute everything that they just said and tell them how they're wrong. Right. And then when they're done talking, what you do then is you just unload all the ammo that you just built up the entire conversation, and that typically doesn't end well. That doesn't typically end with the other person thinking, oh my gosh, you're so right, I'm glad we talked. No, it usually has to do with them going back and forth.
Right.
To whereas if you would actually truly listen to understand. Mm-hmm. Don't listen to argue. Don't listen to contradict. Listen to understand. Mm-hmm. You don't have to agree with them. There's a difference between agreeing and understanding. But if you take the time out to truly understand their perspective, there's an old phrase that it's hard to be angry at somebody whose story you know. Right? So if I think that you were just being mean to me or just being an asshole, it's easy for me to get mad at you. But if I truly understand your intent and realize it was just miscommunicated or misheard, then it's a lot easier for me to kind of approach it in a more compassionate, skillful way.
Right.
So I think a very important skill to have when it comes to coping is listening, right? And that's listening to yourself as well, right?
Yes, like, more so.
Listening to
I would say more so.
Your own inner gut, your inner self, right? Like my kids are my kids. I don't know if you guys can relate to this. When you ask your especially your teenager, why did you do something? I don't know. Yeah, you do. You're the only one that does know, right? And so oftentimes, what I'll tell my kids is like, I'll look at them and I can see it in their face. A thought will pop in and it'll go away.
Right.
And then say, I don't know. So, no, stop right there. That thought that you just had that you chose not to say it.
Yeah.
Whatever that first thing that came in your mind, your instinctual response, that first thing, say it. Because we can run with that. Even if it's something I don't want to hear, I don't care. That tells me where your mind is going. Right. So we can decipher from this point forward what we do with it.
Right.
But by saying nothing, not ignoring that little internal voice and trying to say what you think I want to hear or you think the appropriate response is, helps nobody.
Right.
You got to listen to the internal dialogue, because oftentimes there's a lot of wisdom in that.
Right.
Even if it's an aggressive, mean comment.
I think all the wisdom
there's still
is
wisdom.
There. All the wisdom is there.
Yeah, like your initial, this is what I'm thinking.
Right.
Now, that's when, if you're willing to say it, you also got to be willing to hear it, right?
Well, be careful what you say. I mean, you have to have,
Of course. But what I'm saying is like for my children, I try to create a safe enough space for them where they feel that they can say whatever that instinctual thing is without offending me. Because now it depends on what it is.
That's what I was saying. I mean, sometimes you have to say things in private because they need to be said.
Of course.
But be careful.
But regardless, so listening, I think, is probably paramount. Yeah. Listening to yourself, your internal dialogue, and listening to others' intent, essentially.
Yeah, I want to echo that. Echo. I want to agree with that because, but the listening that I want to focus on for the moment is the listening that if it's something is really bothering you, then it's definitely deeper than whatever the situation is. I can assure you that if something truly bothers you to the point where you're throwing things, where you're wanting to run, where you're wanting to fight, whether you're continuing an argument, then it's much bigger than the moment. It's something else. Now, if you can be honest with yourself in private and tell yourself, what I fear is blank, or my insecurity about this is blank, you'll save yourself a lot of grief. I mean, use the words that you know you will never share with someone else. Because I'm not telling you to come to me or to someone else and say, I'm afraid of blank, or I'm insecure about this. But privately, you should be able to do that.
You got to be honest with yourself.
And it's man, I'm going to say so much of the time it's about anxiety. I mean, it's about fears and insecurities.
Yeah.
And the more you're comfortable with your fears and insecurities, it actually makes you better at coping.
Yeah, of course.
I think why I feel like coping is one of my strengths
right.
is because I'm so open about what I'm insecure about and what my fears are about. I'm not one of these guys that go, no fear. No, I have tons of fears. Just maybe so different from yours that I look like I have no fear.
Right.
And maybe my insecurities are different than yours, so it doesn't look like of course I have them. I can look at anybody and see insecurities. Right. They're really easy to spot. But if I'm bothered by something and it really frustrates, that's when I know for sure there's an insecurity or fear right there. And I think that is the coping strategy. The coping strategy, to me, is being able to tell yourself that, and if you don't like it, study that specifically, what that insecurity is. Study that specific insecurity or fear, and I think you're going to you'll naturally develop other strategies.
Like we said a couple weeks ago, you got to chase the why. You know what I mean? Whatever that why is, you got. Oh no, we said it last week.
I like calling it a what over a why, but that's a therapy thing, man.
Sure.
We use the word what more than whys because whys are confrontational. But yeah,
sure. I'm talking about to yourself.
But I know what you're saying.
Why?
I just had to say it because I know there'll be at least one person to go,
sure.
Well, what statements are better, especially the therapists who watch.
The other thing I would say, aside from just the listening aspect,
right.
Is I'm going to use the word meditation just because that's what I believe in.
Yeah.
Having said that, quiet time. Right, just some quiet reflection. Right, meditation to me is the easiest way to do it because there's literally thousands of meditations that you can try, and once again, there's no I'm good at it, I'm bad at it. Either do or you don't do. It's like saying I'm bad at breathing.
So what happens during the meditation?
Okay, so the reason why meditation is important is practice. Right, that's what I keep trying to tell people. There is no I'm the world's greatest meditator. Nobody cares, right? Like nobody cares.
What type you do, nobody really cares.
What matters is, for me personally, right, what meditation helped me do, because I grew up so angry and reactionary to things, somebody would say or do something, and I would have this overwhelming desire to confront them about it. This overwhelming desire to, I got to let you know right now what I don't like about that, period.
Right.
And I would say and do something, and then typically afterwards it would create a lot more problems that I got to deal with, all because I couldn't just not react.
Right.
So for me, what I learned how to do they call it in Buddhism anyways, they call it like controlling the monkey, right?
Okay.
Your monkey's constantly swinging from vine to vine, the future, the past. Your mind's all over the place.
Right.
And so to be able to kind of like quiet it down and control it. Mm-hmm. So when somebody says or does something now that irritates me or upsets me or bothers me in some way, instead of me immediately just, I'm going to jump at that, what meditation is allowing me to do is control that and be like, hold up, wait a minute. Oh, I see what I'm trying. I see me getting irritated right now. I see me wanting to lash out. Let me figure out why. Okay, it's because of this, this, and this. All right, well, there's a better way of phrasing it. Meditation allows me to do that. It lets me quiet the noise around me, quiet all the little voices telling me, say it, do it. Oh, you can't. Oh, you believe they said that to you? It quiets all that stuff down and puts it in its proper place, which is nonsense, essentially. And it lets me focus in on what I really want to get out of the situation. Okay. And that's what meditation is. That's all it is. Like when you're thinking, when you're meditating, the meditation most people begin with typically is the breathing meditation. Mm-hmm. You focus in on the point of contact, which is your nose. It's coming into the nose. You feel it going down into your your throat and your esophagus, and then what's for dinner tonight? Your mind starts to wander, and then all you really do is you just gently acknowledge that and bring it back. You might be able to do it for like 3 seconds at first. Yep. But if you keep doing it every day, you'll start to build more and more. And then what will end up happening is you'll notice that in your regular life, as you're going around, something will happen and you might start to realize like, wow, I handled that really well. Well, that's a direct correlation to your meditation because you gave yourself quiet time where you learned how to be with your mind and your thoughts, and you learn that your thoughts don't control you. You control them. Yeah. They can come and go. You can't control what pops up and what doesn't, but you can control what you hold on to.
You can control the obsession of it.
Exactly. And so, for me, that's what meditation does. Now, if you're not comfortable calling it meditation, fine. Call it quiet time. You know what I mean? There's some people out there who, for whatever reason,
I'll jump on that.
Quiet time. Yeah. So, like, we spend, especially in today's world, there's, the 24-hour news cycle. There's social media. Yeah. There's video games. There's phones. Right. We spend so much of our time being distracted by things. Right. And I'm not saying that there's not a place for that, but as we're famous both for saying is balance that with some quiet time, man. Just take a couple minutes, meditate. You got your jacuzzi time, a bike ride, walking, just a few minutes a day, just quiet things, just be with yourself for just a minute. That helps. I think that is another skill is quiet time.
Right, and I'm gonna use the word quiet time then, because I've always sucked with meditation, and even what I think of what I do as meditation, it feels like I'm lying to myself when I call it meditation.
Just because you have a certain definition of it, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I just can't get rid of it. So
I mean, you do.
So what I do is I'll go with your quiet time thing. So what it does for me and how I've learned how to deal with my meditation time was it kind of shows me where my head is at the moment. I'm going to explain because I get easily distracted and my meditation really sucks. But when I do it and I get silence and I do that quiet time, I'm able to know if I'm anxious. I'm able to know if I'm hungry. I'm able to know if I'm thirsty. I'm able to know if I'm tired. Yep. What it shows me is which ones of the basic needs are actually not currently being met. Right. Because I'll sit there, and if I find myself needing to pick up my phone and look at it or move, if I can't sit still, I know I'm suffering some internal anxiety. Right. So it's something physical. So the coping strategy for that is get on the bike and ride. I've been riding every day. Right. So get up and ride. Do something physical then. If I sit there and I start thinking about food, if that's the first thing that starts popping, it starts coming in my head, then I think, okay, well, what it is I'm hungry. Right. And so I'm not going to be able to concentrate or do anything until I satisfy the hunger. And if I satisfy the hunger, then I'm going to think clearly. Because the key is, what does the brain need to think as clearly as it does? It needs nourishment. It needs water, not alcohol, water. Yeah. And it needs oxygen. That's why the breathing is so good. Yeah. The oxygen is a great medication. Water is a great medication. Yeah. And that silence allows me to know if I'm dehydrated or hungry or tired. Because if I'm not sleeping right, then of course everything else is more difficult to deal with. Yeah. So that's why I revert everything back to the balance. And even the way I use my meditation is to let me know where I'm off balance, because that's gonna bleed into the next conversation or the next life moment.
Well, part of being quiet, having quiet time and meditation is just being present in the moment. Right. because we do all too often are focused on getting our next fix of pleasure or avoiding our next bit of pain, or focusing on our previous pains or previous pleasures.
Right.
Very rarely are we just in the moment right now. And that's why the breathing techniques are so monumental, I think.
Right.
Because think about it. When was the last time you don't consciously breathe? You just do. So if you're thinking about your breath, by definition, you're in the now. Because we don't consciously think of breathing sometimes.
And that's why so many of you hold your breath. You don't even know you're holding your breath.
Yeah. And so I think, I think listening to others, listening to yourself, and once again, listening to understand, not to disagree and argue. I think quiet time, meditation, is definitely paramount to the coping skills.
Right.
And then I also think having sounding boards is actually a good coping skill. I really do. When I say by sounding boards I mean people in your life, and different people are capable of different things. So make sure you find the right person to go to.
Right.
But having that person, that other individual that you can go and kind of express certain things to and have them help you kind of digest it a little bit. Some people call that therapy. Some people call that a good friend, whatever. The point is,
as long as you're connecting.
Yeah, I know I have certain friends. Like, for instance, my wife and I do a lot of these shows that we watch, like the Married at First Sight, things of that nature. We watch a lot of these things. And one of the biggest failings I see a lot of them have, and one of the biggest blessings that I've inadvertently gotten in my life is people are trying to build a successful marriage, but they're surrounded by a bunch of single people. And it's like, so who are you going to go to help you digest and process what's happening in your life? If you go to a bunch of single people, what they know is how to be single. I'm not saying that they're retarded or anything, or they don't know how. Of course they have insight, everybody does, but what I am saying is the person, like, I feel more comfortable going to you, for instance, who's somebody who's managed to put together almost 30 years of marriage, than going to a buddy of mine who can't string together relationships, because you're gonna have a different insight than he is, because you've done it and you've been there. You're gonna realize the subtleties that come along with it. And so having friends in your life, having people in your life, and I don't mean the yes person, right? Like, I pride myself on having people in my life that don't mind telling me, yeah, you kind of screwed that one up, bro. Like, you really need to do different. Right. No, I'm not saying it in an abusive way, but just call me out. You know what I mean? Accountability is big. And so I think that is an essential component to coping, is accountability. Accountability to yourself, accountability to others. Because too often we get so caught up in our own perspectives that we forget that that's not the truth. That's your truth, but truth is 360, right? The truth is everybody's perspective. And so even though I see it a certain way, like, there's people I know in my life, for instance, right now that have come to me and they're talking about marital advice and stuff like that. And one of them was saying how, this person isn't making them a priority because they would do this, this, and this. And I was like, look, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. That's the way you would prioritize. Right. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's that person's way of prioritizing. And it doesn't mean that they haven't been damaged in some sort of way that they're reacting to guard themselves from future harm or whatever, right?
Well, all psychology is theory, so
yeah, of course,
it's very subjective.
Yeah, and so for me, it's like, that's important to have those people in your life that kind of truly can offer some wisdom and insight to a situation, not just a person who's like, oh yeah, they're oh, that's stupid, that's horrible, and just agree with you all the time and feed the dragon a little bit. Right. We do that enough ourselves, man. Like, we're amazing. We've perfected the art of lying to ourselves. Like,
oh yeah,
we don't need another person to just agree with us to justify where we're at. We do that enough. What we need is people in our lives that are balanced, who have inner peace. They can objectively say, all right, this is what I see. And then if you perfected the other skill of listening, then you could take that back, sit in your quiet time, and digest all of that, and put everything in its proper place. And then, whatever the situation was, in this case we're mostly referring to, with another person, let's say, you're able then to go back to that person. You've had your quiet time, you've been listening, you understand different perspectives, so now you're able to come and compromise. Now you're able to come and say, okay, well, I didn't understand these things. You can compromise. And then guess what happens? Resolution, right? It's no longer a problem. That same argument or that same situation is less likely now to come up next week because you've compromised and you've talked about it, aka you've coped. You've coped with it, you've dealt with it, you've accepted it, you've moved on. That, to me, is the essence of coping, is to make it no longer a problem. Not to say it won't come up again, but when it comes up again, you say, oh, I've been here. I know what this is. Oh, I'm going to listen. I obviously wasn't looking at this person's perspective. You know, that to me is coping. And when you numb your senses, when you do intoxication or you isolate and distance yourself, I'm going to leave the room, I'm going to do whatever. You're not doing any of those things.
Right.
You know, and so to me, that is the opposite. Now, once again, you know, even myself, there's been plenty of times where I'm frustrated or whatever, and I'll walk out.
Right.
Now, I typically, I've learned in my years to communicate that, say like, hey, I'm not walking away from you. I'm walking away from this moment because I need to kind of center myself. So that way I can you know, respect the other person's feelings and where their thoughts are. But I need to kind of like, I can feel myself getting angry, and I can feel myself unskillfully relating to that anger, so I'm going to just back away for a minute.
Right.
Kind of take some quiet time. I'm going to listen to myself, listen to what you just said, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to address it. Right? So there's nothing wrong with that. But that's not my coping skill.
Well, and again, I think that it's important to hit that point the way you made it earlier, which is it's a road to the coping skill.
Yes.
In other words, if doing something physical turns off the channel that you're currently on, it puts you in a different wavelength.
Well, it releases endorphins.
And so some of you need to do that in order to get into a different place, and then you can activate the coping strategy.
But I would say if that is unhealthy for you,
what, the action itself?
Yeah. If the action itself does more harm than good, then maybe you need to reevaluate that.
That's definitely,
you know, and I think that's where the line a lot of people don't realize is, you know, if you think it's coping or it's helping you cope, if it's, well, this is just my tool, well, then you got to take an honest assessment of that tool. Is that tool hurting the people around me? Is it hurting me? Is it creating more problems than good? Right. Like for some people, let's say, for instance, I don't know, just shopping is your coping skill, right? Well, if that momentary benefit is causing problems later on, is it really helping you?
Right.
You know, or if, you know, if like physical violence, right? Because you and I both used to think that, which I will say that I still struggle with that at times, right? Because, you know, physical violence does make you feel good at that moment.
Because it's a replacement.
Yeah, you think it makes you feel good, but if it causes more problems in the future, then it didn't really solve anything. Yeah. Unless you're hitting like a punching bag, maybe. Right. And so that's what I mean. You got to evaluate that and see, is it really truly benefiting you, or is it causing more harm than good?
Well, I think that it depends who you hit. No, the replacements are not good coping skills. Replacements are exactly what they need to be. And a replacement is fine for the moment.
Yes.
But it's only because you can't get to the psychological work when everything physically is out of whack, right? So you got to get the replacement in place sometimes so that you get mind clear. Yeah. But again, let's not forget the basics of what you need. You need a place to live, you need food, and you need water. Yep. And you need oxygen, right? So whatever fire needs to live and it be extinguished by, that's what you need. That's it. So if you stick to those kinds of basics, then you're going to get the clearest mind possible. Yeah. I think the problem is that you want a coping skill to be your coping skill so bad that you're willing to defend it. And I think that's what I see people do a lot is say, well, that works for me. This works for me.
Does it?
And it's like, if it's a replacement, it's not working for you. It's distracting you to the point where what you really don't want to feel is not happening. Yeah. So you're not feeling that at all because you've completely distracted yourself and you've completely replaced it. But it's not coping. No. Therefore, it's going to come back, and there's going to be another life situation where it's going to tap into it. And remember, true problems in your psyche are spread like this, so they attach to a lot of different things. So it'll not only attach to wherever it was uncomfortable, but it's going to attach to your relationships, your job, your friendships, the way you drive, the way you shop, the way you eat. So when you have emotional pain, it's going to attach itself to everything you're doing, and that's why I say that the more balanced you are, if you really want to stick to the basics of coping, drink more water, exercise something, just move. Right? Get yourself that quiet time that Trinity's talking about, that meditation time. That's the psychological stuff that you're going to be doing. Just start with those kinds of basics, and then you're going to find some natural coping skills come to mind.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree.
Because 100%. Everybody has these tools. They're not secrets.
Yeah, that's just the thing. You don't have to.
You're built to cope. You're a perfect specimen to cope.
Yeah, I mean,
you're a freaking machine.
Pretty much. We've coped with nature, forever. Like
you cope with the temperature every day.
Yeah, and
you less than others. I mean, you suck at it.
Well, we don't. The thing is with coping, it's not necessarily getting rid of or eliminating something. It's living with it.
It's adapting.
And adapting. It's adapting.
Be water.
Yeah, be water, my friend.
Be water.
Water flow, water crash.
Water.
All right, man. We got like a couple minutes left. You got anything? Any final thoughts you want to put out there? Anything that needs to be said?
No, I think I just said it.
Well, look at you. Very
well, no.
As a matter of fact,
well, I'm just saying that coping, at the end of the day, is only achieved if you just stop what you're doing, and feed the natural.
Yeah.
Make sure you're fed, but not by potato chips. Something healthy. Make sure you drink something, not alcohol, but pure water. Make sure you breathe something, but not pot or a cigarette. Actual full oxygen, and then at least, and then just know that when you look around, just look around your environment, and know you didn't create not a damn thing that you see. So you are obviously part of a bigger plan than you. You don't need to get into it too deep. I'm just not king shit of the world. When you at least acknowledge all that, then go back to the problem that you were thinking about. Now, how big does it really look?
Yeah. Well said. All right, so as usual, we didn't do it last week because we were just talking about the show, I guess. But as usual, we'll do our 3 tips
and also talk about what show we're going to do next time
on Dharma Time or on Couch Live.
I don't even know. Did we talk about Couch Live?
I don't know. You said we were going to start stringing them all together.
Yeah, but what did I say we were going to talk about next time on the Couch Live?
You didn't.
I thought we did.
No, you didn't.
Well, I know we're going to talk about Dharma Time if you want to do it.
And we were going to talk about panic.
Panic.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about panic.
Coronavirus is gonna kill me.
Yeah, so we're gonna discuss panic next week on Dharma Time. As far as the Couch Live, stay tuned to social media.
Wow,
I'm sure
thank you very much
for
not streaming that together, Trinity.
Couch Live. What are we gonna do for Couch Live? I'm gonna put you on the spot, man. What are we gonna talk about? Friday, 12 to 1.
I have no idea.
That's good. Tune in for that, guys. I'm positive it'll be fan. Oh, you know what? We could talk about the thing that Marissa posted.
Thought we had a guest.
I don't do it. Anyways, I digress. Let's get going. All right, so 3 tips, guys. Coping. It's important. It's a necessity. We all have to have it in order to find inner peace. We have to find it to find that happiness that we're so desperately all looking for. Yeah. We might not understand that coping will get us there, but trust me, coping will. So the 3 tips I'm going to have here is number 1, understand what coping skills are and how important they truly are. They are designed to help you deal with life on life's terms. It's supposed to help you cope with what's happening that you don't like, that's stressing you out, minimizing it and putting it in its proper place and moving past it. The second one is understand that not all coping skills are good. There's some unhealthy coping skills and some healthy ones. You got to learn how to discern the difference. The biggest one is it sustainable and is it helpful? If it's not one of those, then I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's an unhealthy one. And then thirdly and finally, experiment. Find whatever coping skills work for you the best, or coping mechanisms. Maybe like we were saying earlier, maybe music will put you in a better mindset. Maybe if you're getting frustrated, you go listen to a song or something and kind of brings you back down, puts you back in your happy place, and then you can go back and address whatever that was. Find out what's working for you and go from there. So I think that's all we got today. Once again, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow us, things of that nature. And tune in on Friday, the Couch Live, 12 to 1. And then also, 9 Matters More's got a golf tournament coming up. Check us out at nowgolftournament.org. And I think that's all we got. So now that you know better, do better. Peace. Are you still here? What are you doing? I told you, go do better.